Charity that supports migrants was accusing the Greek authorities of knowing about the boat being in distress for hours before going to its aid.
Compared to...
But we start with that huge search, the race to save 5 people who are on board a submersible.
Welcome to Tunacheki's Africa React. I'm your host, Mikey Mushi, and this is a show where we go online and react to viral videos concerning the African continent. Today we'll be reacting to how Western media cover the West versus how Western media covers Africa, right? So we will do a case study of the recent events that happened in the Mediterranean, where 700 migrants drowned in the Mediterranean, right? Despite help and being ignored by the Greek government when they were in need, compared to how 3 billionaires and 2 of their guests drowned on a recreational adventurous journey to go see the Titanic. We want to compare the two differences and see how the West values life, right? 700 people is useless compared to the 5 special Westerners and billionaires who drowned while going for an adventure, right? So we will react to the video, but before we react, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that YouTube can recommend these videos to more people like you.
The true scale of this disaster is not yet known, but it's clear it's extremely bad. More than 100 people were rescued, but survivors claim up to 700 people were on board the boat when it began to sink. And this was the vessel, packed in the deepest part of the Mediterranean Sea. No one seemingly wearing a life jacket. But as Greece's president visited the scene, a charity that supports migrants was accusing the Greek authorities of knowing about the boat being in distress for hours before going to its aid. The disaster has prompted more calls for a joint effort to reduce the number of crossings.
Compared to...
But we start with that huge search, the race to save 5 people who are on board a submersible that has gone missing in the North Atlantic, close to the wreck of the Titanic. Earlier, the US Coast Guard said that the vessel may only have 40 hours of breathable air left for the 5 people on board. Well, ships and planes are scouring the ocean around 640 kilometres off the coast of Newfoundland in Canada. The search area is as large as the US state of Connecticut. Officials say an underwater search vessel has now been launched.
So that was the difference of coverage between the two stories. The Titanic submarine, that 5 people died, and the Mediterranean crisis, migrant crisis, that 700 people most likely died, almost like 100 children, 400 women, right? So you might ask, how do we know, Tunacheki, how do we know that Western media covered the Titanic submarine way more than the migrant drowning in the Mediterranean? Well, us personally, we use this tool called Ground News, right? Ground News is a website where it gives you unbiased perspectives, and then it also tells you, right, who's covering who. Which media is covering what? Is it a right-wing leaning media? Is it a left-wing leaning media? Which stories are not being covered, right? How many media sources are covering the particular story? So we'll just give you an example. So this is from Ground News. So we look at the article where it's like presumed human remains recovered in the wreckage of the Titanic submersible. So the statistics for this story are for the past 1 week, 331 news media covered it. Left-leaning media houses that covered it were 79. Right-leaning media coverage that covered it were 42. Center media houses that covered it were 85, right? With a biased distribution of about 41%, right? So think about it. This news concerning only 5 dead people got 331 news media houses covering it, right? Compared to, like, we're just talking in the last week, right? This story still from Ground News, 441 migrants lost their lives in the Mediterranean, right? This story for this week only got 2 news media houses covering it, right? So, like, just compare the difference, right? Here, only 5 people died, but Western media wants you to focus just on the 5 people who died compared to the around 700 migrants who died. These 5 people were well-off people, billionaires, going for an adventure. And an adventure implies danger. Those people who went to that submarine knew danger might happen, knew they even sent a waiver saying if anything happens, there's no legal what. You know, they knew it was something dangerous. And something dangerous happened in the adventure, which, everybody has sometimes a bad day. They died. The media houses covered it. Search and rescue, all the way from Europe, right, came to rescue them, spent millions, tens of millions to rescue them. While in the Mediterranean story, unfortunately, an NGO reported that the Greece authorities knew that ship that was carrying the 700 migrants was in distress, right, as you saw in our reaction, right, and they ignored it. Can you believe it? The Greece people allegedly knew this ship was in trouble and they still let it capsize and people die, as compared to this other one where also reports said the US Navy knew those people died 30 minutes when they went down there, but they still spent all these efforts and all this money to cover it, right? So that's why we love personally using Ground News, our website, because it gives us the unbiased news. It gives us unfiltered news. It's a tool that lets you know what news you're consuming, what the media doesn't want you to know, who owns these media houses. And this is one of also our favorite features because it tells you know, it lets you know, is this media house owned by a billionaire? Is this media house owned by a left-wing owner? Is this media house owned by a right-leaning owner, right? And, you know, every media house always has a caveat towards it, right? Towards the owner. They report things that only help the demographic that they are reporting towards, right? The good thing with Ground News is that they've got a feature called the blind spot, where it shows you, right, what's not being covered, right? So if African stories are maybe ignored, you can just go to Ground News and you would see what's not being covered, right? So we really thank Ground News for sponsoring this video, and we've been using their tool way before. And you guys have always asked us, hey, Tunacheki, how do we always know the right stories to cover? How are we always good at telling you what's going on in Africa? Yeah, simple, because we use Ground News, and you can simply go to the descriptions below to the link Ground News /Tunacheki and have a look by yourself, right? Start reading news with some thought, right? Just don't consume what's being bombarded to you, right? As you can see, just because like you see BBC, you see CNN, just don't consume. Like, think, where is the story coming from? What is the leaning of the story? What are the biases of those stories? Here's the problem. The video count for the migrant story that 700 people died coming from the coast of Libya to Greece, right, doesn't even reach 10 million views. I counted as much as I could, right? But the story of the 3 billionaires with their guests, right? 5 people who died in the Titanic submarine reached a staggering more than 1 billion views. Just like you can imagine, as we've seen on Ground News, only 2 media houses are covering in the past 7 days. I've covered this story for the migrant in the Mediterranean, that almost 700 people lost their lives. And right now, in the past week, 331 are still covering the Titanic submarine story. Yeah, like how sad it is that life is measured based on how rich you are and based on where you're from and based on your skin color. This is very important to me, how Africans consume media, how Africans stop just blindly watching BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, France 24, The Independent, Daily Mail, all those ones, right? Like, start being smart, and you will see the world in a very enlightened perspective. Okay, so this has been Mekimushi from Tunacheki. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. It's the best thing you can do to share this video to friends and family. Yeah, and with that said, always remember, Africa is watching.